I was supposed to be finalizing wedding details this month. Instead, I am packing up my fiancée Jessica's belongings into storage boxes. After 5 years together and 8 months of engagement, she suddenly announced she needed a break to tour Europe with her college friends before our wedding in September. Something seemed off about her request from the start. I ignored the red flags, but when I discovered what was really happening, I made the hardest decision of my life. Before I tell you how I went from planning my dream wedding to canceling it, entirely drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I rebuilt my life after betrayal knocked me down. Jessica and I met at a housewarming party 5 years ago through our mutual friend Brian. I noticed her immediately, not just because of her striking blue eyes or contagious laugh, but because of how engaged she was in conversation. While everyone else was making small talk, she was deep in discussion about sustainable architecture, which happened to align with my passion as a civil engineer. I worked up the courage to join their conversation, and we ended up talking until 3 a.m., long after other guests had left. Our connection was instant and profound. We shared similar values, communication styles, and dreams for the future. Within 3 months, we were exclusive, and after a year we moved in together. Jessica thrived in her career as a marketing executive, while I worked my way up at an engineering firm specializing in environmentally conscious building projects. We complemented each other perfectly. When I got too analytical, she brought creativity into the picture. When she became overwhelmed with possibilities, I helped her focus on practical solutions. We rarely fought, and when we did, we addressed issues directly and respectfully. Our friends often commented that we were the couple they aspired to be. After 4 years together, I knew Jessica was the one I wanted to spend my life with. We had discussed marriage and agreed we were heading in that direction. We shared dreams of buying a house in a family-friendly suburb, having 2 kids and maybe a golden retriever. Everything seemed aligned. I planned a weekend getaway to Napa Valley 8 months ago, complete with a private vineyard tour and sunset dinner overlooking the valley. When I dropped to one knee and presented the vintage-style emerald ring she had once pointed out in a shop window, her eyes filled with tears. She said yes without hesitation, and we spent the weekend celebrating, calling family members, and beginning to envision our wedding day. The following months were filled with excitement. We set a date for September, secured a beautiful venue at a historic farm just outside the city, and started working with vendors. Our families were equally enthusiastic, with my parents offering to contribute to the catering and her parents covering the venue. Jessica seemed to enjoy every aspect of planning, creating detailed Pinterest boards and scheduling appointments with florists, photographers, and caterers. About 3 months after our engagement, I began noticing subtle changes in Jessica's behavior. She became more protective of her phone, often taking calls in another room or quickly switching screens when I walked by. She changed her passwords and seemed increasingly distant during our evenings together. Around this time, Jessica reconnected with her college friend group via Facebook. She had fallen out of touch with many of them after graduation, but suddenly she was constantly messaging them, sharing inside jokes I was not part of, and spending hours on video calls that would leave her nostalgic and somehow melancholy. I did not think much of it initially. Reconnecting with old friends seemed natural and potentially healthy. I encouraged her to invite them over for dinner, or suggest a weekend trip to visit those who lived in nearby states. She always had reasons why that would not work out, explaining they were scattered across the country, and their schedules rarely aligned. The first mention of Europe came during a casual dinner at home. Jessica mentioned that her friend Megan had suggested a Europe trip someday, and she thought it sounded fun. I agreed that international travel was something we both enjoyed and suggested we could plan a honeymoon or post-wedding trip there. She nodded noncommittally and changed the subject. Over the next several weeks, references to Europe became more frequent. Jessica began following travel accounts on social media and researching destinations like Paris, London, and Barcelona. Still, I thought she was just daydreaming, or perhaps considering ideas for our future travels together. Then came the night that changed everything. We were having a quiet dinner at home when Jessica put down her fork, looked at me seriously, and said, "I need to talk to you about something important." Her words sent a chill through me. She explained that she had been doing a lot of thinking about our future and felt she needed some space before our wedding. She revealed that she and her college friends had booked a 6-week tour of Europe, departing in just 3 weeks. The trip would include stops in multiple countries, and she emphasized that this was something she needed to do before settling into married life. What shocked me most was her suggestion that we take a break from our relationship during her trip. No daily calls, minimal texting, and the freedom to, in her words, fully experience everything Europe has to offer. I sat there, stunned fork midway to my mouth, as she continued explaining how this trip was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with her friends before everyone settled into marriage and family life. She talked about how we would have our whole lives together after the wedding, but this was her last chance to have this experience. When I asked about the wedding preparations that would need to happen during those 6 weeks, she casually mentioned that most things were already arranged, and her mother could handle any remaining details. When I expressed concern about what this break would mean for our relationship, she accused me of being controlling and not supporting her independence. The dinner ended awkwardly. Jessica acted as if she had simply announced a minor schedule change, rather than a fundamental shift in our relationship mere months before our wedding. I went to bed that night with my mind racing and a growing knot in my stomach that told me something was very wrong. The days following Jessica's announcement were some of the most confusing of my life. I tried to be understanding and supportive, telling myself that pre-wedding anxiety was normal, and perhaps this trip was her way of processing the major life change ahead. But the more I observed her behavior, the more my anxiety grew. Jessica became increasingly secretive about the trip details. She would abruptly end phone calls when I entered the room and close her laptop if I walked behind her. When I asked basic questions about the itinerary or which friends were going, she gave vague, inconsistent answers. One day she mentioned 5 friends were joining, the next day it was 3. And sometimes she referred to it as a girls' trip, while other times she was less specific. What troubled me most was the constant messaging with someone named Alex. The name appeared on her phone, notifications frequently, but whenever I asked about Alex, Jessica would say, "Just a friend helping with travel plans," and quickly change the subject. I had never heard her mention an Alex during our 5 years together. After a particularly distant evening where Jessica spent 3 hours on a video call behind closed doors, I called my best friend Michael for advice. We met at a local bar the next day, and I explained the situation. Michael listened intently, then asked questions I had been avoiding. Has Jessica ever been flaky about commitments before? Do you know these college friends she is suddenly so close with? Why would she need a relationship break during a vacation? His concerns mirrored my own growing suspicions. I had been finding other troubling signs. A receipt for expensive lingerie I had never seen. Credit card charges at stores I did not recognize. A guidebook for expats living in Europe, rather than just visiting. When I tried to discuss my concerns with Jessica, she became defensive, accusing me of not trusting her and invading her privacy. Yet she continued to be evasive about trip details, refusing to share a concrete itinerary or specific information about who she would be traveling with. 2 weeks before her departure with wedding plans in limbo, and my concerns dismissed, I made a decision I never thought I would make. While Jessica was at a dress fitting with her mother, I sat down at her laptop, which she had left open, and logged in. I told myself I just needed reassurance, just confirmation that I was overreacting. What I found instead confirmed my worst fears. The trip itinerary showed hotel bookings for only 2 people, not the group she had described. Email exchanges revealed that Alex was actually Alexandra, a female friend I had never met or heard mentioned before in our 5 years together. But it was not a group of women traveling as Jessica had implied. According to the emails, only Jessica and her friend Megan would be flying initially, with Megan's boyfriend Jason joining them partway through the trip. Other friends she had mentioned were not included in any of the plans. Even more disturbing were calendar invites for apartment viewings in London and Paris saved in her digital calendar. A drafted email to her boss discussed potential remote work opportunities in European offices. Social media messages with Megan revealed conversations about possibly not returning after the trip, about using this time to explore whether she really wanted to get married, or if she was just going along with expectations. The most painful discovery was a dating app I found hidden in a folder on her phone, with her location already set to European cities on their itinerary. Her profile described her as single, adventurous, and open to showing visitors around when she moved to Europe. That night when Jessica returned home, I confronted her with what I had found. I did not yell or make accusations. I simply asked her to explain the discrepancies between what she had told me and what I had discovered. Her reaction was telling. Instead of apologizing or trying to explain, she exploded in anger about my invasion of her privacy. When she finally calmed down, she admitted that she had been feeling trapped and uncertain about our future. "I need to explore my options before settling down," she said. "Marriage suddenly feels so limiting. I love you, but I am not sure if this is what I want anymore." When I asked why she had not simply been honest with me about her doubts, she said she did not want to hurt me and thought a break might give her clarity without having to end things definitively. That night ended with an ultimatum from Jessica: accept the break and her trip without questions or end our relationship. Still reeling from everything I had learned, I told her I needed time to think, just as she apparently did. She seemed satisfied with that response and spent the night acting as if our conversation had never happened. The next morning, Jessica left for the airport with a casual goodbye, as if she were just leaving for work. She promised to text when she landed, then walked out the door, leaving me standing in our half-furnished apartment, surrounded by wedding planning materials, wondering if she would ever really return. After Jessica's departure, I spent 3 days in a fog of confusion and heartbreak. I cycled between denial, hoping this was all a misunderstanding, and crushing realization that the woman I thought I would spend my life with had been planning an escape route. On the 4th day, my phone rang. It was our wedding venue coordinator, Linda, calling to confirm a change in the reception menu that I knew nothing about. When I explained that Jessica was traveling and I was not aware of any changes, Linda seemed confused. "Your fiancé made several changes last week," she explained. "She reduced the guest count by 30 people, changed the meal options, and canceled the live band in favor of a DJ." This was news to me. When I asked for details about the reduced guest list, I discovered that Jessica had mainly cut guests from my side, including several family members and close friends. When I requested a copy of the revised list, I noticed she had added names I did not recognize, presumably her new friend group. Disturbed by this discovery, I began contacting other vendors. Each call revealed more changes made without my knowledge. Our photographer shared that Jessica had canceled the engagement photo session we had scheduled. The florist mentioned she had completely changed our agreed-upon arrangements to significantly more expensive options, with the additional cost charged to my credit card. The final blow came from the wedding DJ, who casually mentioned that Jessica had changed our first dance song from the one we had chosen together, a track that had been playing when we first met, to a song I had never heard of. When I looked it up later, I discovered it was significant to her and an ex-boyfriend from college. Meanwhile, Jessica's communication from Europe was sporadic and superficial. She would send occasional texts with generic comments like, "Having a great time" or "miss you," but never responded to my specific questions about our relationship or wedding plans. Her social media told a different story than her texts to me. Photos appeared showing her at clubs and beaches, always surrounded by people I did not recognize, predominantly men. None of the locations matched the itinerary she had vaguely outlined before leaving. 1 week into her trip, Jessica's friend Megan's boyfriend, Jason, posted a photo of them at a nightclub in Barcelona. His caption read, "Jessica's wild nights with the locals continue. Third night, third club, third group of admirers. Who needs a fiancé with options like these?" The post was quickly deleted, but not before I saw it. That same day, I checked our joint credit card statement online and found charges from romantic restaurants in amounts clearly for 2 people, not a group. That evening, sitting alone in our apartment, surrounded by wedding magazines and sample invitations, I experienced a moment of complete clarity. This was not cold feet or pre-wedding anxiety. This was not a temporary phase. Jessica was living a completely separate life and had been planning her exit for months, keeping me as a safety net in case her European adventure did not work out. The next day, I called a financial advisor to discuss disentangling our finances. We had a joint checking account, shared credit card, and had recently begun discussing combining our savings in preparation for a house down payment. Fortunately, we had not taken that step yet. I also scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in relationship trauma. During our first session, she helped me recognize patterns that I had been blind to Jessica's history of keeping her options open. Her reluctance to fully commit to our future plans, her tendency to make me feel unreasonable for expecting transparency. With clarity and support, I developed a methodical plan. First, I began calling wedding vendors to cancel our arrangements. Many were understanding when I explained the situation, and some even offered partial refunds due to the circumstances, though I still lost significant deposits. I drafted a respectful email to our wedding guests explaining simply that the wedding was canceled. I did not share details about Jessica's betrayal, stating only that we had come to recognize fundamental incompatibilities. I asked for privacy during this difficult time and thanked them for their understanding. Next, I packed Jessica's belongings carefully into labeled boxes and arranged for a storage unit rental. I paid for 3 months in advance and made sure the climate control would protect her things. I was hurt but not vindictive. I consulted with my landlord about the lease situation. Since only my name was on the lease, I had the right to change the locks. The locksmith came the same day, providing me with new keys and a sense of security I desperately needed. I closed our joint checking account and credit card, fairly dividing the balance based on our contributions. I removed Jessica as an authorized user on my personal accounts and credit cards. Finally, I took a week off work for self-care and reflection. I spent time hiking, reconnecting with friends who had noticed my absence during the relationship, and beginning to envision a future different than the one I had planned with Jessica. Throughout this process, Jessica remained largely unaware of my actions. Her sporadic texts continued growing slightly more affectionate as her trip progressed, as if she were testing the waters to see if her safety net remained intact. I responded politely but briefly, never revealing my plans or decisions. By the time Jessica's 6-week European tour was nearing its end, I had completely dismantled the life we had shared and begun rebuilding my own. I was prepared for the storm that would come when she returned to find her key no longer worked and her belongings gone. More importantly, I was confident in my decision and prepared to stand firm. Jessica returned from Europe on a Tuesday morning. I had intentionally scheduled a day off work to be available for the inevitable confrontation. At 2:17 p.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Multiple missed calls, texts demanding explanations, and voicemails alternating between rage and tears. I waited until evening to respond, sending a simple text: "I am available to talk tomorrow at the coffee shop on Main Street at 10 a.m. if you would like to discuss things civilly." The next morning I arrived early, securing a quiet table in the corner. Jessica stormed in 15 minutes late, looking tanned but exhausted. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her hair hastily pulled back. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" she demanded before even sitting down. I remained calm. "I canceled a wedding that you clearly did not want," I replied. "I also took the liberty of separating our lives, since you had already emotionally separated from ours." Her anger quickly gave way to panic as I calmly explained the steps I had taken. I assured her that her belongings were safe in storage, that I had divided our assets fairly, and that I had not disparaged her to friends or family. "You cannot do this," she insisted. "We were just taking a break. I needed some space to think." "And what conclusion did you reach during your thinking time?" I asked. Jessica faltered, unable to provide a straight answer. Instead, she shifted tactics, tears welling in her eyes as she spoke of our history together. The good times, the plans we had made. She claimed she had realized during her trip how much she truly loved me and wanted our future together. I listened patiently, then asked simple questions. "Why did you change our wedding plans without telling me? Why did you lie about who you were traveling with? Why were you looking at apartments in Europe? Why did you create a dating profile describing yourself as single?" Each question left her more flustered, until finally she broke down. "I was confused," she admitted. "I thought I might want something different, but I realized I was wrong. Europe was not what I expected. The guys were pushy. Megan and I fought when Jason arrived, and I spent the last 2 weeks mostly alone, missing you. In that moment, I felt an unexpected emotion pity. Jessica had gambled with our relationship, expecting adventure and romance, only to find disappointment. She had kept me as a backup plan, and now that her European dreams had not materialized, she was ready to settle for the security I offered. "I am sorry things did not work out for you," I said sincerely. "But I deserve better than being someone's second choice or safety net." Her expression changed as she realized I was not going to relent. "You will regret this," she warned. "You will never find someone who loves you like I do." "Maybe not," I acknowledged. "But I would rather be alone than with someone who is not fully committed to our relationship." As I stood to leave, Jessica grabbed my arm. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked, panic in her voice. I planned my whole future around us. The irony of her statement was not lost on me. "You are smart and capable," I told her. "You will figure it out just like I am doing." In the weeks that followed, Jessica made multiple attempts to reconcile. She sent emotional emails, had friends reach out on her behalf, and even showed up at my workplace once, causing a scene that left me embarrassed, but more convinced than ever that I had made the right decision. 6 months later, I had settled into a new rhythm. I moved to a different apartment in the same city, one without memories of Jessica in every corner. I received a promotion at work, partly due to my increased focus and dedication. I joined a rock climbing gym and a book club, expanding my social circle beyond the mutual friends Jessica and I had shared. Perhaps the most unexpected development came when I reconnected with Rachel, a college acquaintance who had moved to my city for work. We bumped into each other at a coffee shop and struck up a conversation that led to friendship and eventually something more. With Rachel, I experienced what genuine care and respect felt like. Our relationship developed slowly, built on honest communication and mutual support. 1 year after canceling what should have been my wedding day, I found myself reflecting on the journey. What had initially felt like the greatest loss of my life had actually been a gift. Had Jessica not shown her true colors before our wedding, I might have discovered her lack of commitment years later, perhaps after children and more entangled lives. The experience taught me to recognize red flags, rather than dismiss them, to value self-respect over comfort, and to understand that sometimes walking away is the strongest choice you can make. I learned that love should not require constant validation or come with contingency plans. Most importantly, I realized that being alone was far less painful than being with someone who was not fully invested in our shared future. The betrayal and heartbreak, while excruciating at the time, ultimately led me to a healthier, more authentic life than I might otherwise have found. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that ultimately saved you from greater heartbreak? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Share this video with someone who might be ignoring red flags in their own relationship. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we deserve someone who chooses us completely, not just when convenient. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest growth.